This is former Senator Bailey Hutchinson, and she is now supposed to be a paid consultant for NBC and affiliates. She's being interviewed by Tameron Hall, who I really don't care all that much for, but on this particular interview, Tameron Hall basically showed that this former congressperson really doesn't understand what's going on and doesn't have a clue about what President Obama is doing, and to further point that the Republicans are not offering any viable solutions or alternatives to what the president's doing. So I'm going to play this clip from MSNBC and make my commentary at the end.
Occupied by Senator Ted Cruz, former Texas Senator Bailey Hutchinson. Senator Hutchinson, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you.
It's always great to have you on. I want to first get your reaction to what we've heard from Mitt Romney as well as Jeb Bush, with Donald Trump having what some have referred to as a bromance, as the casual language, with Vladimir Putin. Putin complimenting Donald Trump this morning. Morning Joe pointed out that Vladimir Putin has killed journalists. Donald Trump, your front runner in your party, seemingly shrugging that off.
Well, I think that was unfortunate to equate killing journalists with some kind of statement that Trump made that Americans kill people too. I mean, we're fighting ISIS. We're fighting people who are cutting Americans' heads off. That's not an appropriate analogy, and I think that we've got to start really talking in depth about substance on dealing with Russia, dealing with Syria, and of course immigration, which you all have been talking about this morning. These are issues that the Republicans in Congress, those people that some like to talk about as Washington Republicans, but they're trying to solve problems. And I will say they passed very important tax cuts yesterday in the House that will be passed in the Senate today. The filibuster's been broken. So the Republicans are trying to solve problems, and I think the candidates who are talking about solving problems are going to begin to hopefully get up in the polls and get the voters out.
Well, right now, your office indicated to me that you've not endorsed anyone yet. I know you were on MSNBC back in March. At the time, you were asked if you would officially endorse Jeb Bush, and you at the time said, I've met with him, and I think he's exactly what we need right now. Is that your feeling today?
I do think that Jeb Bush would be a wonderful president. I also think there are others that are running who could solve problems, could lead the Republican Party, could unite Americans behind policies that will solve the issues facing our country. I have not officially endorsed anyone, but I do think there are 3 or 4 of our candidates who would be very strong candidates.
Well, we've had a series of debates at this point. We're 7 weeks, I believe, from the first votes. Why have you decided not to endorse a candidate at this point?
Well, for one thing, I'm contractually obligated to NBC and MSNBC and CNBC, and I have been asked to be someone who can give opinions, and so I haven't endorsed, but I certainly think that these debates have been very good. I think they've brought out the issues that are facing our country, and I think the people of America are going to be able to decide with very different views between Democrats and Republicans what they think is the right path for America.
You made mention at the top when I asked you about Donald Trump's comments regarding Vladimir Putin that it's time for these candidates to start having substantive conversations on immigration, which is the back and forth happening right now between Senator Cruz, Marco Rubio, in addition to ISIS and the other issues that face this country. But yet, when you look at the national polls, Donald Trump is at 38%. This is just a recent poll, ABC Washington Post poll. He is battling it out with Ted Cruz in Iowa, but overall, the majority of polls show a significant lead for Donald Trump. What is it about the Trump message that is so appealing to your base?
I think the message is that we need a change in government in Washington, that we need politicians who are going to listen, and people are scared. They're scared for their security. The fact that we have terrorist happenings in America, in California 2 weeks ago, we had a terrorist attack, and our president won't even call it a terrorist attack.
But have you heard something from your front runner that would help solve this solution? You point out the president won't call it a terrorist attack, but he has. But what about your front runner? What has Donald Trump said to your base that provides a strategy to defeat terrorism, to defeat ISIS?
See, and that was one of the first lies that this lady told. The president has been calling that a terrorist attack, but she's falling back on the previous rhetoric where they waited before calling it a terrorist attack. Tameron Hall, to her credit, caught her on this one, and this is one of many that she's going to catch her on.
I don't think he has, and I think that is a very important issue and a point. He hasn't provided a way forward to deal with ISIS, to deal with terrorism, but he has brought the issue forward, which is what I think the base is reacting to and wanting.
But is mentioning it enough? I mean, you say that it's time for a substantive conversation, but on the other hand, you point out, well, Donald Trump is bringing it up. Well,
and here she catches her on the second one. As far as mentioning, Hutchinson was talking about putting forth some kind of actual policy, which none of them have. So anyway, let's pick it up.
Everyone is bringing up ISIS. How do you avoid the massacre in Paris, the massacre in San Bernardino? It's one thing to talk about it. It's another to offer a different strategy from the Obama administration. And so far, it doesn't appear any of the candidates for the GOP have offered a different strategy than what's in place.
I think they have. I think the Republican candidates in the main, several of them, have put forward a strategy of getting involved in stopping ISIS in Syria, in stopping ISIS in Iraq, of going in with military force in a coalition with Arab countries, as well as European countries and others.
See, and this is stuff that President Obama has already done. Okay, so she's quoting this like it's something brand new that only the Republican candidates or presidents are offering, but this is old school as far as Obama's concerned, because he's already doing it, and this woman fails to realize that.
We need a broad coalition that will fight against people who are trying to establish a caliphate and who are cutting people's heads off to do it, and abusing women, abusing children, murdering people on video. And I think that the Republican candidates have put forward plans, different ones, different plans, but in the main, they're saying we ought to get involved on the ground with a coalition, and that is a strategy. And I think the president has not put forward such a strategy, and that is the difference between the Democrats' approach to this and the Republicans.
But everything you just named is exactly the strategy in place. The president has increased the number of special ops on the ground. In this battle, there have not been troops added, which honestly, I believe, other than Donald Trump, you don't have a wide support of your candidate saying putting thousands of U.S. boots on the ground in that region. The coalition, a larger coalition, we saw the president meet with Francois Hollande right after Paris, and the call for Arab nations to join this. We've seen that push from Turkey and others. So everything that you've named as a strategy from the GOP is exactly what's in place with the current administration and national security team.
That's her third catch. Exactly right. Everything that she mentioned has basically already been put in place. And Ms. Hutchinson is shaking her head like, no. But anybody who does any research can see that that's true.
No, the president has not had a strategy put forward that puts a number of troops and shows the coalition that would be involved in such a movement. That has not been put together by the president, and I think the president's response when he went to France and when he met with President Hollande was very weak, and I think that has been brought out by the Republicans. He has yet to have a real commitment to dealing with ISIS and the building of a caliphate. It is, and in fact,
everybody mentions caliphate. You can attempt to quote unquote bomb geographic areas, but in order to totally get rid of this caliphate, there's going to take boots on the ground, because once you acquire an area, it's going to take people to hold on to that area. And it's only at this point now that Saudi Arabia is going into a coalition with a bunch of other Muslim countries, and I guess they're going to be the ones that actually prepare to actually go in and hold territory that's taken back from ISIS. But let's continue.
We haven't been really bringing Turkey in until very recently.
That's not true.
Turkey is essential to a strong coalition, and we need a president who will sit down with the leaders of the free world as well as the leaders of the Arab nations who have said they want leadership.
Which he has.
And the President Obama is not providing that leadership. He's going and making a deal with Iran to allow them in a coalition with Russia to build nuclear weapons with our funds that we would give Iran. Every Republican...
That is the one that absolutely killed me. And I was waiting for Tameron Hall to catch her on that one. This lady just said that the United States is giving funds to Iran in order to build a nuclear weapon. Okay, first of all, the money that Iran is going to obtain is their own money, which was derived from oil revenues. Now, if there was money that the United States was going to give to Iran, that would have to be in the budget that was just passed. And I was waiting for Tameron Hall to call her on that and to ask her where in the budget the money that the United States was quote unquote giving to Iran, where was it in the budget? But she didn't press her on that one, and this is close to the end of the interview.
Candidate is standing up against that. That is not a strategy for the future.
Senator Bailey Hutchinson, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
that's the definition of a person who really doesn't have a clue, or possibly she does and just wants to continue to sprout the Republican line that Obama's weak, Obama doesn't know what he's doing, etc., etc., etc. Why is it that the only decent senator out of Texas in a while has been Conyers? This woman obviously didn't really know what was going on and still doesn't. And Ted Cruz is just an abomination. So anyway, you make your own call, but in my opinion, this lady just got on TV and just basically exposed her own ignorance as to what's going on basically with ISIS, terrorism, and in the world in general.